Story kicks off in a fantasy VR game world named as Paldea, where freedom and personalized class building were highly valued. Dragons, titans, and monstrous creatures emerged from the shadows and brought destruction across the land as flames spread through the city and people ran in terror. A red dragon flew over the burning kingdom, while a young warrior in a blue cloak rushed forward with his spear. He already knew everything about this world like the back of his hand, because he was one of the game's top players. His goal today was to slay the adult white dragon and claim the highest reward. He leapt into the sky toward the dragon and drove his weapon forward as the beast roared fiercely. The warrior declared that he would send the creature to hell in the name of the great Titan god. The dragon opened its mouth and released a massive burst of fire. The warrior's eyes widened as the flames rushed straight toward him in midair. The warrior drove his spear downward through the flames and struck the dragon's body while fire burned around him. The dragon let out a furious roar and swung him away with violent force. He screamed as he was blasted through the air and crashed heavily into the ruined ground. Sitting among the rubble, he wondered why it was still not working. The dragon descended toward him with its jaws wide open, while purple electricity crackled around its body. Realizing something had failed, he thought he could only leave the game now. He desperately tried to log out, but nothing happened. Shock filled his face as he questioned why he could not leave. Panic grew as he feared an error had occurred. The dragon lunged straight at him with a deafening roar. Its massive body slammed down violently as dust and debris exploded across the area. Outside of the VR world, people in the city looked up at a giant screen in shock as someone challenged the white dragon. One person believed the challenger was going to die for sure. The warrior, or say our MC Aryan, appeared standing in the middle of a modern city street with a glowing light beneath his feet. He looked around silently before staring at the screen showing the dragon battle. He promised that next time he would definitely kill the beast and told it to wait for him. He walked through the crowded street while traffic passed nearby. Suddenly, Truck Kun came with its legendary ability to kill someone in one shot. Aryan's expression changed in alarm as everything around him faded into a dark red void. He found himself lying upside down in the snow, with blood spread beneath his body. Confused, he wondered if he was dead. A warning appeared that the character was in a returning state to prepare for the next chapter. Another message stated that the character was alive. Hearing the same monotonous electronic voice again, Aryan complained that the game company could not even afford a female voice actress with some sweet voice. He slowly got up in the frozen, snowy land and recognized the place as the northern ice fields. Realizing he had already logged out, he questioned why he was still inside Paldea. Pain suddenly struck his head, causing him to groan as strange memories flooded his mind. He saw fragments of life filled with snowy villages, tribal people, monsters, and a powerful figure carrying children. Shocked, he tried to understand what was happening to him. Aryan realized the memories belonged to Alvin Aryan, a mysterious tribal youth living in seclusion within the northern ice fields. The familiar name made him wonder if he had become an NPC inside the game. Still kneeling in the blood-stained snow, he called for the system interface. A glowing blue system window finally appeared before him, but he discovered he still could not log out. The interface displayed Alvin Aryan's stats and abilities. Aryan noticed the character possessed extremely high attributes compared to ordinary practitioners. The hidden class description stated that Alvin had received the blessing of a common youth from a hidden tribe, and was considered a chosen one. Another system message described a special core talent called Reshaping the World. This talent could continuously rewrite the logic of reshaping rules and even alter the world itself. Aryan remembered previously obtaining a weaker version of the same talent through a challenge quest, but this new ability was on a completely different level. He realized the power could transform a magic-based or physical-based cultivation system at will. As he stared at the information in disbelief, the title Descendant of the Starforger appeared before him. Aryan realized the title Descendant of the Starforger belonged to Alvin Aryan, the final boss of the level 50 raid after the 4th version update. The Starforging Titan, Alvin Aryan, a terrifying existence players mockingly called the Blackened Brave King. Surrounded by skeletons and dark energy, the massive armored figure sat upon a throne like a ruler of death. Staring at his own hand, Aryan questioned whether he had really become the Starforging Titan. He quickly realized he was now just an injured barbarian stranded in the northern ice fields. More visions appeared before him. He saw the rise of nations, the chaos of 1,000 towers, the skeletal tide, and the alchemic ascension. He also remembered catastrophic events like the Calamity Scion. Aryan understood that every one of those major events was a near-death experience where only the strong survived. Gritting his teeth, he declared that he absolutely could not die inside the game. As blood stained the snow around him, he remembered that it was already mid-December. The extreme weather disaster known as the Northern People Calamity was approaching, and he first needed to survive the ice fields. Despite his injuries, Aryan forced himself forward through the snow. He declared that fate may have reincarnated him as a boss destined to be defeated, but he would not follow fate's arrangements. He vowed to survive the ice fields and eventually rewrite fate itself. Continuing through the freezing wasteland, Arian decided that surviving the winter was necessary to confirm the game's timeline and search for clues regarding bloodline purification. Arian dragged himself across the snowy slope while reminding himself that bloodline purification was the key to becoming the strongest titan. As he continued forward, he realized he was dozens of kilometers away from the tribe and still far from the border of the ice fields. Beyond that, hundreds more kilometers separated him from the nearest country, the northern magic kingdom of Eland. Walking through the frozen plains, Arian remembered there should be a hunter's cabin hidden in the surrounding woods with firewood and food supplies prepared for winter. He decided to avoid the time when the white tide would arrive, then follow the trade route to find a caravan heading toward the Central Empire, Linde. Looking toward the distant kingdom, he recalled that Linde was the birthplace of many major events in the game's storyline. He also remembered that entering the city would allow him to trigger the main storyline again. Thinking further, Arian recalled the class route he had been most familiar with in his previous life, the Alchemic Knight. He remembered it as an emerging class born after the magic alchemic revolution, capable of forging extremely durable armor. Suddenly, Arian noticed movement nearby and wondered if someone had arrived. He quickly hid himself behind the snowy hill and realized someone was approaching on horseback. Since the area was far from the main trade route and outside the special season, he found it strange that ordinary travelers or caravans would appear there. Soon, a female rider covered in white clothing rushed across the snow on a beast-like mount. Several hooded riders chased the woman across the snowy plains while firing bolts from their crossbows at high speed. The woman bent low on her mount and avoided the incoming attacks as the riders continued pursuing her. Watching from behind the snow, Arian immediately recognized the black warhorses. He realized that ordinary warhorses could never move so quickly and silently across the snow during winter. Only undead mounts blessed by the goddess of death could run at such speed without making noise. As the chase continued through the frozen wilderness, Arian recognized the rider being pursued. She was Frigga Guthsmith, the Empress of the Magic Kingdom Eland. Arian noticed that she had already thrown away her current title and was still only the youngest princess. He realized the current era was before the new era of 1896, during the age of swords and magic. From his experience as a veteran player, he judged that the three pursuers were no stronger than Tier 2. Reaching a conclusion, Arian decided there was only one answer. He hid himself in the snow. The hooded riders continued chasing Freyja through the snow. One of them asked whether they should capture her alive, but another rejected the idea. As the undead horses rushed forward, a hand suddenly burst out from beneath the snow and grabbed one of the horse's legs. The undead horse stumbled after its leg was grabbed from beneath the snow. Arian burst out from the ground and used the momentum to throw the rider. A red aura flared around his body as a system message announced the activation of the Barbarian Berserker state, increasing his strength. The fallen rider noticed the sudden ambush and shouted that someone was there. Arian leapt directly onto the rider and mocked him for riding birds instead of horses. The hooded rider tried to resist, but Arian grabbed him by the neck, attacked on him with a knife, and dragged him off the mount. The man's hood fell back, revealing a scarred face as he screamed in pain. Arian recognized them as the same scumbags from Eland. The remaining riders immediately turned their crossbows toward Arian and fired while shouting to kill him. The fallen rider yelled in frustration after their attacks struck their own ally instead. Arian remained calm and noted that the blood race possessed incredible endurance. Even with severe external injuries, they would not die unless their internal organs were destroyed. Meanwhile, Freyja continued escaping across the snow on her riding bird, but she fell suddenly as an arrow struck the bird. One of the surviving riders ordered the others to kill the princess while he dealt with Arian personally. The hooded rider answered his commander and admitted that he had been careless for a moment. The commander blood race warrior mocked the hooded rider, saying it was shameful for a low-tier barbarian descended from the Nightwolves to challenge nobles like them. Without hesitation, Arian swung the commander toward the hooded blood drinker rider. The enemy is a Tier 2 blood drinker and Tier 1 embraced ones here. Arian realized that the blood race hierarchy consisted of Tier 2 blood drinkers leading to Tier 1 embraced ones. Arian charged at blood drinker while shouting that it was time to finish him off. The blood drinker warrior unleashed his speed and rushed forward violently, forcing Arian to react immediately. Arian noticed that the blood drinker was extremely fast and admitted that the attack had been dangerous, because the attack pierced through Arian's hand. Arian grinned and challenged the blood rider to draw his sword properly now. The blood drinker prepared to counterattack, but Arian suddenly declared that it was his turn. Arian clenched his fist, surged forward with explosive speed, and brought his punch down toward the blood drinker rider. After twisting the blood drinker rider's neck and killing him, Arian noted that the berserker state greatly increased his endurance. He realized that if he could still feel pain in his current condition, the attack would normally have been unbearable. He stood behind the blood race warrior after cutting him down, and mocked the nobles of the Magic Kingdom for lacking real combat experience. Nearby, Freyja suddenly shouted at Arian not to underestimate the Elrond nobles. She raised a stone and smashed it directly into the wounded blood race warrior's head. Arian raised both hands and admitted that he took back what he had just said. Arian looked toward Freyja and warned her that the riding bird was not going to survive. Freyja rushed to the injured bird named Fillory and held it tightly while calling its name with tears in her eyes. The bird slowly closed its eye as Freya embraced it. Kneeling in the snow, Freya mourned quietly and wished her partner and friend to rest in peace. Afterward, she thanked Arian for helping her. She introduced herself as Freya Antonia Josephine Guthsmina and said he could simply call her Freya. With no objection to the lady, we too gonna call her Freya. Arian silently stared at Freya and admired her pure appearance, contrasting figure, and thick thighs, thinking that there was a reason she had so many followers. Freya noticed his gaze and immediately asked him what he was looking at. Arian suddenly remembered an important matter and ran toward the corpse lying in the snow, while Freya watched him in confusion. He reached into the dead blood race warrior's mouth and pulled out some teeths, happily declaring that it was all money. Afterward, Freya asked for his name and where he came from. Standing in the snow, he introduced himself as Alvin Arian, a northerner. Freya immediately recognized the name and called him the Blessed First Son. Arian admitted that he did not expect her to know the ancient saga. Freya explained that she only knew a little about it. She said it was the predecessor of the Shuma language, and that she had learned some of it from ancient books in the Elrond Capital Library. Arian then asked who the people chasing her were and why they wanted to kill her. He admitted to himself that he still lacked information about the situation. Freya revealed that she was actually the first princess of Elrond. She explained that she had become the target of an assassination attempt during the graduation ceremony at the Royal Academy. Arian questioned how she had ended up in the northern ice fields, since the place was at least 100 kilometers away from the nearest border. Freya answered that she had come there to avoid the real trap. Let's dive in some history lessons of Elrond, known as the Magic Kingdom, that was famous for its mainstream magic schools that focused on hex modification and even taboo arts like necromancy. Because of that, the ruler of Elrond was also known as the Demon King. Originally, the people of Elrond were a nomadic tribe famous for their medical skills. After being driven out by conservative religious forces, they migrated to the northern barrens of Palladia. To survive there, the Elrondians began researching different ways to defeat monsters. Over time, they evolved from medical sorcerers into professions such as red mages and flesh monks who mastered hex modification. Eventually, a profession appeared that dealt directly with bone and soul manipulation, creating necromancers. They also created a ritual capable of remodeling the human body, known as the Elrond Secret Rite. Since then, the Elrondians became known as one of the world's strangest groups, with no one knowing what kind of people hid beneath their unusual appearances. Unlike the privileged nobles who mainly received cheap mass modifications and became lower-tier demons tied to fixed roles, common people could end up fused with oxen or given the arms of gorillas. Arian smiled and thought that no one would expect this air-headed princess to one day begin a glorious revolution. He believed she would try to break the rigid class system, but unfortunately things would not end well. Arian then asked what she meant by the real trap. Freya explained that the assassination attempt at the Royal Academy had only been a feint meant to force her toward the capital. She believed the enemy's main force was waiting on the road leading back to the capital from the academy. Because of that, she and her subordinates had taken a detour through the northern ice fields. She had assumed that even if the enemy discovered that route, their numbers would remain small. Freya clenched her fist and admitted that she thought she could handle the situation herself. Arian quietly observed her and admitted that he had not expected the future Blood Queen and 43rd Demon King of Elrond to have such an innocent side. Cronahem noticed him drifting off and asked if he was still listening. He calmly answered that he was. He then asked whether she wanted to know who had sent the assassins after her. Shocked, she immediately asked if he already knew. Arian grabbed the dead attacker by the hood and pulled the body closer, while Freya watched in confusion. As Arian crouched beside the corpse, he asked how many people in Elrond had mastered blood race modification rituals. Freya answered that, including the Grand Duke of Blood Dragons, there were 12 noble families in total. While those families opposed the Royal Academy admitting commoners, they would never go as far as assassinating royalty. Arian kicked the corpse aside and told her she was forgetting another group of people. Freya asked who he meant. Arian declared that the Necromancers were behind the attack and sarcastically asked the supposedly dead assassin if he agreed. The corpse's eye suddenly opened. The assassin sat up while laughing and admitted that he had not expected to be discovered. The man's face and flesh began peeling away, revealing a skeletal appearance beneath the skin. Freya identified the signs as spell marks, bone manipulation, corpse proxying, and long-range spiritual projection. She realized that a grand wizard from the Hippocratic school of necromancers was involved. Well, the Hippocratic school specialized in skeleton manipulation and mass-producing undead puppets, so it's kinda possible. The skeletal necromancer praised Princess Freya Antonia for her intelligence and mentioned the mage sanctuary of the City of 1,000 Towers reopening its doors. He also stated that she had become the first genius to graduate as an academic mage. The necromancer claimed that if the operation had not received support from certain exalted figures, they would not have been able to prepare a backup plan. He snapped his skeletal fingers and stated that Princess might actually have succeeded in escaping. Dark magic circles appeared around the corpses lying in the snow. The bodies rapidly twisted and mutated as flesh tore apart and bones reshaped into monstrous forms with glowing green eyes. A gigantic undead creature fully emerged behind the skeletal necromancer. Its exposed muscles, glowing eyes, and enormous skeletal frame radiated dark energy across the snowy battlefield. The Necromancer admitted that if their lord had not shown mercy, even more people would have died. He also stated that he did not wish to personally kill such a talented junior with his own hands. Freya watched cautiously as Arian stepped forward with a confident grin. He raised his hand and told her not to be scared because he wanted to have a conversation with the Necromancer. He apologized for interrupting and pointed out that the Necromancer was only at tier 4, not tier 5 yet. The Necromancer admitted that although he had walked the path of the flaming sword and reached the final crown, there was still a gap between him and the perfected nobles. The Necromancer then questioned whether Arian truly believed he could defeat him. Arian casually replied that he was only asking. He suddenly grabbed Freya and pulled her onto his back. Arian reminded the Necromancer that barbarians possessed the fleet of foot skill. Carrying Freya, Arian instantly sprinted away across the snow at tremendous speed while shouting farewell to the crowned wizard. As Arian fled across the snowy plains with Freya on his back, the Necromancer realized that Arian had already discovered the skeleton general was not fully calibrated yet. Enraged, the Necromancer swore that the barbarian would pay for this. The Necromancer merged himself with the massive undead creature. The creature was ordered by the Necromancer to chase after Arian immediately. While running, Arian looked back with a grin and mocked the Necromancer, saying that a mere tier 4 Necromancer was not worthy enough to stop him. Green magical projectiles suddenly fired toward them from behind. Still carrying Freya, Arian dodged through the barrage while sprinting across the battlefield. The Necromancer shouted in frustration and demanded to know who Arian really was and how he possessed so much knowledge about necromancy. Arian casually replied that he was just a passing barbarian. The enraged undead monster continued its pursuit and declared that Arian would die along with all of his secrets. The Necromancer gathered green energy around its body and unleashed an ultimate diffusion type attack. Its skull glowed with green light as Princess Freya Antonia panicked and shouted that it was using the finger of death. Arian immediately carried Freya and told her not to move. While rushing through the snow, he accidentally touched her inappropriately, making her shout that he was being rude and demand to know where he was touching. A bright explosion burst behind them as Arian kept moving with her on his back. While running, he counted 1 second, 2 seconds, and 3 seconds, then estimated that the attack would reach its peak in 4 seconds. He then declared that the enemy was too slow. At that moment, a projectile shot through the air at extreme speed and pierced straight into the Necromancer, or say skeleton general's head. A massive explosion followed as its body was blasted apart and crashed into the snow. The damaged Necromancer, or say skeleton general, lay in the snow, and Arian stated that it was safe now. Freya looked at it in confusion and wanted to know what had happened. Despite its injuries, the skeleton general praised the hit and stated that he would remember the kid responsible. The scene then shifted to Elrond capital, Evanmore, where rain fell across the city. At the Demon King's quarters in beautiful Spring Palace, a pink-haired young man hurried through the halls toward the palace interior. He entered and reported to his father that his sister's whereabouts were currently unknown. He then knelt and requested permission to lead the Silver Knights of the Imperial Guard to search for and rescue her. His father refused and stated that until he took over the throne of the Demon King, the Imperial Guard could not leave Evanmore, and he especially could not leave either. The young man reacted in shock and questioned it, reminding him that his sister was supposed to inherit the Demon King's throne. His father explained that Evanmore could not fall into chaos, that it could collapse at any moment, and there was still no news about his sister. The father continued and explained that Elrond needed a successor who could take over the throne at any time. The pink-haired young man lowered himself and accepted it, saying he understood his father. He then turned and walked away in silence while a dark expression covered his face. The father remained behind and smiled before thinking about Freya, his most beloved daughter, and wondered where she was. Far away in the snowy mountains, a burst of energy spread across the area. Arian looked surprised and commented that they had disappeared just like that. He had expected at least an "I'll be back" before they left. Freya suddenly moved close and asked who he really was. Arian casually answered that he was just a barbarian. Freya immediately called him a liar and told him that real barbarians hated that insulting term and called themselves Northmen instead. Freya questioned Arian further and asked how a barbarian could know so much about magic, especially something as obscure as necromancy. Achan quickly raised his hand and stopped her, saying he could not explain the specific reason. He told her to just pretend that Manir had whispered it in his ear. Freya crossed her arms and reluctantly agreed that although she disliked liars, she would let him off the hook. She then adjusted her clothes and, as the eldest princess, expressed her deepest gratitude for his assistance twice in a row. Freya confidently declared that the Guthsmith family would definitely repay him. As she moved, her clothes suddenly shifted and exposed part of her heavenly thighs and leg. Arian immediately reacted and shouted, "It's white." Freya panicked and hurriedly told him not to look at her. Arian awkwardly tried to explain that he had been talking about something else while Freya quickly covered herself. Arian suddenly completed the sentence and shouted, "White tide." Freya looked confused for a moment as Arian immediately lifted her and began running through the snow while shouting for her to run. The two quickly rushed toward a snow-covered cabin. Inside the cabin, a pot boiled over a fire while Arian and Freya sat near it. Holding a bowl, Arian asked Freya how she had planned to deal with the 3 vampires if he had not intervened. Freya held out an item and told him to take a look. Arian recognized it as a gem scroll and remarked that using something like that against vampires would tear them to pieces in the first round. Freya smiled and said that he knew quite a bit. She then asked if he could tell her why the Necromancers had launched the assassination. Arian said it was hard to say, but if the situation could be analyzed, the biggest beneficiary would be the one responsible. Freya then said that perhaps it would be her younger brother Otto. Freya lowered her head after mentioning Otto. Arian reacted with surprise and referred to Otto as the pink-haired cross-dressing prince. Freya warned Arian not to be deceived by appearances. Arian explained that if the princess died, the prince might seem to benefit the most at first glance, but reality could be different. Freya responded that even if Otto inherited the throne, the conflict between Elrond's commoner reformists and noble conservatives would only become more intense. Arian then explained that the biggest beneficiary could be a third-party faction controlling the monsters. He added that if the assassination succeeded, the conflict between reformists and nobles would worsen even further. Freya looked shocked and immediately realized the possibility of the undead faction being involved. Freya suddenly stood up and declared that she needed to return to Elrond immediately. Arian calmly stirred the pot and warned that if she left the room for 30 seconds, she would become an ice sculpture in the white tide. Freya said she could not simply watch Elrond be destroyed. Arian explained that the peak of the white tide would continue for another 3 days, and that no one would act recklessly during that period. He added that for the undead faction, Freya being alive and knowing the truth behind the assassination was their greatest destabilizing factor. Freya folded her arms and called Arian an ordinary barbarian before asking what he suggested. Arian smiled and answered that making it back to the capital alive was the first step toward victory. Freya stared at him with surprise. She looked at Arian and said she wanted to stop the undead faction's conspiracy, so she needed a knight to accompany her. Freya then extended a necklace and declared that in the name of the future third demon king of Elrond, she wanted to form a contract with Arian. Arian immediately refused and said he had many things to do and could not stay in Elrond for long. He thinks that for the Goldsmith royal family, a contract was sacred and unbreakable once signed, and then replied that he also could not sit idly by while the undead faction's conspiracy continued. Freya paused and said she understood. Freya then admitted she could not promise Arian wealth or power at that moment. She added that if he became her Black Knight, the only payment she could currently offer was herself. Arian suddenly choked in shock and quickly waved his hands, saying that was not what he meant. He explained that he had his own mission and hoped Freya could instead perform an Elrond secret ritual for him at the proper time. Arian then questioned inwardly how the Grand Princess of Elrond could know more about Starlightheart than him. Freya calmly answered that it was not a problem. As long as the ritual was not top secret, she could perform it after recovering her mana. She also asked whether Arian had already decided on the type of ritual materials needed. The two stood together as Arian thought for a moment. Arian raised his glowing hand and said it was difficult to explain with words alone, so he would demonstrate it. Blue energy gathered around Arian's hand as he activated the core, reshape the world talent. He reached forward while activating his ability, and fragments of memory inside the body's original owner became clearer and clearer. Arian focused and reminded himself that he had not forgotten his mission or the truth behind the burned village. Later, at the Northern Icefield Hunter's cabin, Freya looked around in confusion as a massive glowing blueprint-like ritual structure appeared before them. Arian explained that it was a ritual capable of mass-producing individuals close to Tier 3 powers. Freya stared at it in shock and asked if there was a problem. Arian explained that the materials were not expensive and could likely be found in the black market. However, the only rare item needed was dragon blood. Freya grabbed Arian and asked if he truly wanted to stop a war, saying such a creation was not developed to stop wars. Arian calmly replied that power itself was neither good nor evil, only people were. He added that the person examining the blueprint now looked like a scholar, rather than a demon king. Freya fell silent. She then swore in the name of the Goldsmith bloodline that without Arian's permission, she would never reveal the blueprint or use it on anyone else. Arian told her there was no need to be so serious. Freya then explained that the nearest city was Flandrel, and that after the white tide ended in 3 days, they could go there to gather the ritual materials. 3 days later, the scene shifted to Flandrel. Flandrel is a famous commercial city in the northern suburbs of Elrond. It is a northern city-state directly under the Demon King of Elrond, and was not governed by the sword-bearing nobles. The streets were crowded with lower-tier demonic beast workers carrying goods and pulling carts through the city. Achan watched the scene quietly, and recalled that he had seen these lower-tier demonic beasts in the game before, but seeing them in reality felt completely different. As he looked at the city and sky around him, Achan realized once again that this was a real world and not a dream. Freya suddenly announced that they had arrived. Arian and Freya stepped into the city in disguises and moved through the busy streets. Freya asked Arian what he was looking at. Arian warned her to be careful because there were informants nearby. Freya became startled and wondered if they had already been discovered. Arian calmly said it was not that serious. He explained that their disguises were too obvious and likely meant to attract attention, while the real professionals hid behind them. A large flaming display drew the crowd's attention as people gathered around it. Arian explained that with his current strength, he could not confidently guarantee Freya's safety. He added that Flandrel's nearby black market was the most likely place to gather all the magic materials at once. Freya asked how they would enter the black market, and worried that the gold coins she brought might not be enough. Arian confidently replied that Mimir would tell him. The two then walked deeper into the crowd. Arian walked through the square with Freya and said that Mimir always had a way of making a person's mind clearer as pigeons flew around them. A blond man sitting on a bench lowered his hat and looked toward them. Arian approached him, and the man asked who they are. Arian introduced himself as Garm, then said that he had business and needed to cross the River Gol and enter the gates of hell. He felt that using these code words from the game was truly awkward. Freya stayed close beside him and wondered what he was talking about and whether it had something to do with the black market. The man shifted on the bench and questioned who Arian really was. He explained that without a ferryman's introduction, even a respected alchemist would not receive a welcome in the market. Arian continued and asked what if he was the messenger of Hermes. The man answered that it depended on how heavy a burden a person carried. He then apologized and added that Arian did not seem like someone carrying much of a burden. Arian placed his hand near his chest and explained that there had been a misunderstanding. He clarified that he was not a merchant. He then activated Core, World Reshaping. A glowing object formed in his hand and transformed into a gold ring with a large red gem. Holding out the ring, Arian asked if things were acceptable now. The blond man looked at the ring with a startled expression. He immediately stood and apologized, admitting that he had not expected Arian to truly be an alchemist because Arian's attire looked too simple. Arian said that while traveling abroad, attracting too much attention was not always a good thing. Later, Arian followed him deeper inside as armored guards stood nearby. One of the guards welcomed the respected alchemist to the night street and assured him that he would definitely find what he needed there. Arian looked ahead in silence as a large underground city illuminated by torches appeared before him.
Orion arrived at a building where he learned that a gentleman inside was recruiting alchemists and offering quite generous remuneration.
The blond man politely told him that if he did not mind, he could stay inside for a moment before taking his leave. Later, Arian sat with Freya and she asked whether there were any dedicated alchemists in the black market. Arian said that the black market was an illegal operation, so no alchemist wanted to become too involved with them. However, as long as the money was enough, it was acceptable. An older man approached the table, removed his hat, and respectfully greeted Arian and the woman, Freya. He introduced himself as Old Jabba and apologized for arriving late. Arian responded that Mr. Jabba was being too polite. Jabba looked at Arian and wondered under which master he had apprenticed to become a full-fledged alchemist at such a young age. Mater calmly explained that he had apprenticed under Master Edward Illick of the Geno Commercial Federation, located tens of thousands of miles away. After completing his apprenticeship a few months earlier, he had started traveling across the continent to broaden his horizons. He then activated World Reshaping while holding an object in his hand. Jabba stared in shock and exclaimed that he had never seen such astonishing alchemy before. He respectfully bowed and told the honorable alchemist that he would handle the appraisal personally and asked him to follow him to the second floor. Jabba led Arian and Freya upstairs to the second floor. Jabba assured Arian not to worry about the remuneration and said he would not disturb his work. Inside a room filled with alchemy materials and equipment, Freya admitted that she had never heard of an alchemy master named Edward Ellick. Arian calmly explained that it was normal because Master Edward Ellick came from a chivalric novel. Freya stared in disbelief and exclaimed in shock that a chivalric novel actually worked. Arian then stated that the remuneration this time would be no less than 1,000 gold pounds. He also requested a list of the required primary materials and said they could directly deduct the material costs as part of the payment. Freya questioned how he planned to appraise the equipment and warned that he could not keep relying on the name of a made-up master to bluff his way through. Arian confidently replied that he had his own methods. He activated Core World Reshaping. 2 hours later, Arian handed a list to Jabba and informed him that the commissioned appraisal had been completed. He asked Jabba to prepare the items written on the list. Jabba gratefully thanked the honorable alchemist and said that before sunset he would deliver the listed materials and the remaining funds to the public laboratory of the Alchemist Association. Old Jabba smiled and said that he would head back first. As he walked away, Jabba looked pleased. He thought that Freya was only a busty maid, yet whenever she frowned, his legs trembled uncontrollably. A man beside him spoke quietly and said that the dead-faced people searching for Edward Illick also came from the ice fields. He wondered if it could be connected. Jabba's expression became serious. He ordered him to contact the boss, saying their guests did not seem simple. The man answered and agreed. Later, the scene shifted to the Alchemist Association. Inside, Arian stood near a table full of materials, and said that it was unfortunate that even someone as capable as old Jabba could not find the missing dragon blood. Freya pulled out a blade and prepared herself. Arian looked at her and asked if she was really thinking about doing that. Without hesitation, she raised the blade and cut her arm. Blood slowly flowed from the wound as sweat appeared on her face. She collected the blood and asked if that amount should be enough. Arian looked at her with surprise. He then asked what he should do next. Freya gave him a thick book. She needed time to prepare, because he could not speak the Huma language. She told him to use the time to memorize the dictionary. Arian jokingly asked whether she was discriminating against barbarians by saying that. He sat down on a sofa and began reading the book. After a while, he suddenly looked up in surprise and said, "Huh?" Freya began performing a complex alchemy process. Blue energy flowed from a crystal in her hand and moved into a container filled with liquid. Sweat appeared on her face as she carefully continued the operation. Arian watched from nearby and thought that her skillful technique was impressive enough to make even someone like him, who had once worked as an alchemist, feel inferior. 3 hours later, candles burned around a glowing magic formation with strange symbols. A container rested in the center of the magic circle. Fum. Freya wiped her forehead and said the work was finally complete, mentioning that it had taken 3 hours and that her skills had declined somewhat since leaving the City of 1,000 Towers. She explained that it was her first time using that type of sorcery modification template, and asked if he wanted to test it before using it directly. Arian stretched and confidently said he believed in her skills. Arian found that the completion rate is 200%. He looked toward her and confidently told her there was no problem, and that she should trust herself as well. Freya covered her face in surprise and reacted by asking what he was doing. He quickly told her to turn her head away. Standing behind him, Freya began the process and used Limit Double, False Life on Arian. A glowing pattern appeared across Arian's back as the spell took effect. Freya stood beside the ritual area and explained that she had cast water breathing on him, so he would not need to hold his breath inside. Arian stepped into the green liquid and entered the container, while Freya admitted that she was still worried. Sitting inside the liquid, he told her not to overthink it because he was doing this for his own sake. Orion floated inside the green liquid with his eyes closed, and reminded himself that he was doing this for himself. Suddenly, a strange change occurred. His eyes widened in shock as he felt something unexpected happening. Orion quickly reacted and became confused, wondering what it meant. Looking down, he saw his body still lying inside the container, and realized that his soul had left his body. He moved forward and stared at a strange blue space containing a human figure with different body parts floating around it. Confused, he wondered if he had to assemble it himself. Sweat formed on his face as Arian admitted that although he was a veteran player, he had never performed surgery before. He looked at the large countdown and realized that standing there and watching would solve nothing. Arian immediately made a decision. He chose to integrate the second heart to maintain internal circulation and focus on surviving first. Moments later, he completed the process and declared that it was done. Arian touched the second heart and immediately integrated it into the body model. Energy spread through the glowing veins as the connection completed. Without wasting time, he continued working. Arian moved on to the nervous system, digestive system, respiratory system, and the skeletal strengthening organs one after another. As he checked the body model, Arian noticed a set of black carapace among the available components. He commented that it was not bad at all. The armor-like structure suddenly equipped itself onto the body model, covering it completely. At the same moment, the countdown reached 0. His physical attributes had all increased by 3. He also acquired an extra trait and talent called Heaven-Bestowed Armor, while Titan Bloodline and Star Soul remained active. Before Arian could continue checking the results, everything around him began changing. Back outside, Arian's real body rested inside the glowing container, while green energy rose around it. Nearby, Freya watched carefully. Freya looked surprised, and admitted that she had not expected the newly improved formation effects to be this powerful. She remarked that the barbarian had truly received a huge bargain. Inside the liquid, Arian remained unconscious as changes continued taking place throughout his body. A loud sound echoed from outside the room, causing Freya to immediately become alert. She realized someone had arrived. A knock came from the door. Jabba politely addressed Arian and apologized for the interruption. He explained that there appeared to be a mistake in the recent inventory. Freya quickly responded and apologized on Arian's behalf, saying that his lordship was currently conducting an experiment. At the same time, she sensed danger and realized there was more than one presence outside the door. She decided the defenses needed reinforcement. Freya activated a sealing ward. Green vines spread across the area as the protection spell formed around the room. Without hesitation, she designated her faction and used an instant summon, calling forth a Tier 1 monster. A glowing portal opened beside her. Light swirled through the air as the summon arrived. Freya thanked the being for answering her call and requested help to replenish her mana. Standing calmly beneath the floating light, Freya prepared herself as the room's defenses grew stronger. The thorn-covered ceiling ward tightened around the windows, while Jabba outside insisted that the matter was extremely important and demanded to speak with Arian in person. Freya continued her preparations and chanted additional summons. She called for Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4 monster summons. Blue magical energy swirled around her hands as multiple creatures appeared inside the room. A white bear, a blue armored creature, and a glowing wolf-like beast gathered around her. Standing at the center, Freya spread her arms while rings of light expanded around the summoned monsters. She then cast a fifth circle spell, Lesser Planar Ally. A brilliant summoning circle appeared overhead as a radiant angel descended from above. This being is a choir angel named Gabrielle. Gabrielle moved close to Freya and declared that she would fight for her lady. Meanwhile, outside, two large men stood beside Jabba. Jabba ordered Blue and Gugu to break down the door. One of the men responded that he understood, while the other declared that he would go first. They rushed forward and charged at the door with full force. The sealing magic activated immediately. A glowing barrier burst outward and violently threw the attackers backward. The men screamed as they were blasted away. One of them shouted in frustration and cursed the magic. Jabba stepped forward and ordered everyone to force the door open. Several men gathered with weapons and heavy clubs, repeatedly striking the sealed entrance. Cracks spread across the glass while thorny vines still wrapped around the frame. Inside, Gabrielle leaned close to Freya and said that Lady Freya had personally entrusted her with taking care of her. Freya quickly stopped her and explained that her father's situation was critical. She asked Gabrielle that if she reached the capital, she should pass the news to her mother. Gabrielle smiled and replied that she understood. The shattered door finally broke apart, and armed men climbed through the opening while broken glass scattered across the floor. More men rushed inside with weapons in hand as their leader, Jabba, moved forward with the group. Gabrielle stood beside Freya while the white bear, the wolf, and the blue creature gathered around them. Jabba stared in shock and wondered how there had only been two people before, and questioned what those creatures were. Gabrielle charged forward through the air together with the summoned creatures as the attackers panicked and shouted for everyone to hold back the beasts. The white bear roared angrily and demanded to know who they were calling beasts. The blue golem attacked the men and sent them flying while screams filled the room. Fear spread through the attackers, and Jabba shouted for everyone to run for their lives. The glowing wolf lowered itself and faced Jabba directly. Jabba slowly approached the wolf with a knife in hand and nervously begged the good dog not to bite him. He tried to calm it down and claimed he even had tasty treats for it. The wolf barked loudly and suddenly leapt at him. Jabba froze in shock as the wolf bit his meat. Gabrielle covered her face and finally understood why Freya had not summoned her earlier, even when he had been alone. Freya looked worried and asked her to take things seriously because the battle was not over yet. Gabrielle stood before the glowing tub and declared that her little Freya had been snatched away by a barbarian. Freya followed behind and angrily asked what nonsense she was talking about. Inside the green light, Gabrielle noticed Arian and stared in surprise. Gabrielle looked shocked and realized Freya had used her own noble blood to perform a secret rite for Arian. She questioned what kind of relationship they had, but Freya brushed it off and said it was not what she thought. Freya hesitated and tried to explain that Arian was actually someone important. Arian floated inside the green light while it became clear that he was a very important friend to her. Freya looked at him gently and urged Arian to wake up. A painful scream suddenly echoed from outside. Freya quickly turned around in alarm and asked what had happened. They looked outside and froze in surprise. Gabrielle, Freya, the wolf, the bear, and the blue golem creature all stared ahead as dark smoke spread around fallen bodies. Gabrielle immediately realized it was a lethal curse spell that had been planted in advance. Freya wondered if this was an attempt to frame them as mass murderers. A hooded person appeared among the bodies and greeted Freya, calling her his dear old classmate after such a long time. Freya stared in shock and recognized the name Kyan Paulus. Kyan stood calmly before them. Gabrielle immediately concluded that his appearance meant the Necromancer faction had completely betrayed the Elrond royal family. Kyan pulled back his hood and casually claimed this was only a small reunion between old classmates. He questioned how treason had suddenly become part of it. Gabrielle warned Freya to stay alert because she sensed an evil aura nearby. Kyan spoke calmly and called her an unfamiliar angel lady. He asked why she had exposed the truth and admitted that he was not used to fighting people head-on. Dark energy swirled around him as black smoke twisted through the air. A sinister skeletal spirit with glowing eyes emerged from the shadows. Freya looked shocked and immediately recognized the technique. She identified it as spirit manipulation and soul harmonization, realizing Kyan had advanced into a Tier 2 spirit master of the Necromancer faction. Kyan confirmed it and questioned whether she understood how much someone of low birth like him had to sacrifice to gain power. He then said he would show the answer through his actions. Holding a strange object in his hand, he released a violent surge of dark and crimson energy. With a furious expression, Gabrielle immediately shouted for everyone to protect the princess. The white bear and wolf roared and rushed forward together. Their bodies crackled with energy as they charged toward the attack. Kaon let out a quiet laugh while dark energy surrounded him and collided with the summoned creatures. A massive explosion erupted, filling the area with purple and black energy as debris scattered in every direction. Bear, wolf, and blue armored summon were thrown back by the impact. Gabrielle planted her sword in front of herself and spread her wings to shield Freya from the blast. She looked back and assured Freya that Gabrielle would protect her. The summoned beasts appeared exhausted and weakened after the attack. Freya warned everyone not to advance further, saying they were using physical bodies and getting hurt could mean death. As the smoke slowly cleared, Gabrielle announced that the shockwave had dissipated. Freya stared ahead in shock and asked what she was looking at. A dark figure appeared, and Freya identified it as a Nether Iron Guard. The Nether Iron Guard stood before Kayan as dark energy flowed around its body. Freya looked at Kayan and questioned whether he had truly burned all of those people's souls. Kayan stood beside the guard and responded that they had only been a group of gang thugs. He asked if Her Highness the Princess actually felt sad for those sinners. Gabrielle stepped forward with her wings spread and stated that evil deeds committed by sinners did not lose their wicked nature simply because they had been inflicted on bad people. Kayan looked toward her and remarked that, as expected of an angel, her words were bright and righteous. He then smiled and said that it did not matter. Dark purple energy gathered around his hand as he gave the order to attack. The Nether Iron Guard immediately rushed forward. Gabrielle moved ahead and called for her lady to cover her. Freya looked up and called Gabrielle's name. Gabrielle charged toward the attack with her sword raised as the Nether Iron Guard struck forward. The Nether Iron Guard's attack rushed forward, and Gabrielle's eyes widened in surprise. Freya stepped in and created a glowing barrier around Gabrielle. She moved in front of her and declared that now it was her turn to protect her. Gabrielle continued the clash and thanked Freya while striking against the Nether Iron Guard. As the battle continued, it became clear that with the undead puppet standing in the way, reaching Kayan directly was impossible. The fight also showed no signs of ending anytime soon. Kayan watched with a smile and mentioned the royal secret right bloodline. He told Her Highness that her performance did not do justice to the enviable resources she possessed, then looked around and wondered where that barbarian had gone. He questioned whether that barbarian had abandoned their lovely princess and gone into hiding. Freya looked at Arian with worry and urged him to wake up quickly. She feared that otherwise she would have no choice but to do something she did not want to do. Kayan suddenly remembered that the barbarian was supposed to be undergoing the royal secret ritual. He laughed and remarked that Her Highness was truly generous with her love. Suddenly, Arian woke up and slapped him while pinning him on the ground. Startled, Kayan tried to understand what was happening. Green fluid dripped from Arian as he ordered Kayan to make the undead stop. He pinned Kayan to the ground, and Kayan immediately begged him not to kill him. Kayan shouted for everyone to stop attacking. The undead let out a roar and halted, leaving Gabrielle staring at it in surprise. Arian looked at Kayan while holding him firmly, and asked what that thing was. Kayan quickly explained that the object was given to him by his mentor and allowed him to control the Nether Iron Guard from a distance. He insisted the Nether Iron Guard had already stopped and begged Arian to let him go. The Nether Iron Guard suddenly took another step and charged toward Freya. Seeing it move again, Arian questioned why it had not stopped, while Kayan became confused and wondered why it was no longer obeying his commands. He realized it might be willing to sacrifice his life just to assassinate the eldest princess. The Nether Iron Guard roared and continued its attack. Arian understood that the Nether Iron Guard had no independent thoughts, and that the order had come directly from someone with greater authority. He also realized that person was already approaching this place, so he decided he needed to end the battle as quickly as possible. Arian threw Kachen aside and rushed toward the Nether Iron Guard. As it continued attacking, he leaped onto it and ordered it to stop right there. The Nether Iron Guard roared and launched a relentless barrage of spear attacks at Arian. Freya warned him to watch out as the spears closed in from every direction. Arian blocked the incoming strikes, then grinned and revealed that he had expected this. He explained that he also possessed invisible scales, and invisible armor covering his body. With a powerful shout, Arian caught the Nether Iron Guard's weapons, lifted overhead, and slammed it into the ground with tremendous force, sending debris and dust flying in every direction. Arian dusted himself off after crushing the Nether Iron Guard, and calmly asked Kayan if he had anything he wanted to say. Kayan warned Arian not to celebrate too early, claiming that his mentor would arrive in Flandre within half an hour. 2 minutes later, Arian returned wearing fresh clothes and carrying Kayan's belongings. He joked that he had not expected Kayan to be carrying so many useful items. The furious Kayan complained that Arian had first stolen his clothes and was now taking his gear as well. When Freya asked why he had not simply killed him, Arian explained that Kayan was a two-faced opportunist who constantly switched sides, so keeping him alive might prove useful later. As they reached the Alchemist's Guild, Arian suddenly smashed through the building's entrance by crashing a carriage straight through the front doors. Freya carried Gabray through the air while chasing after Arian, who had stolen a carriage from the Alchemist's Guild. Gabray angrily called Arian a barbarian and demanded to know if he even understood what kind of carriage he had stolen. When she asked if he was sure he could drive it, Arian admitted that he had no idea because he was reading the instruction manual while driving. After quickly skimming through it, he excitedly announced that he had figured it out and learned it was a Dawn Type 1 Magitech carriage, Gabriel suddenly warned him to be careful. Arian looked up in alarm, grabbed the controls, and desperately tried to slow down and turn the carriage. Moments later, he confidently declared that he had mastered it, and shouted for full speed ahead as the carriage raced through the streets. A massive dark cloud spread across the sky above the city, immediately catching everyone's attention. Gabriel looked toward it in shock while carrying Freya, and Arian also noticed the strange phenomenon. After taking a closer look, Arian recognized the source. He explained that it was the Dark Canopy, created by a fourth-tier Grand Magus of the Hippocratic school named Lucius Sulla. He added that the so-called cloud was actually a legion of undead creatures. Gabriel ordered Arian and Freya to continue ahead without her. Freya immediately objected and asked what Gabriel was planning to do. Gabriel firmly declared that she would stay behind and hold the enemy off. Freya realized what she intended and begged her not to use her final area, warning that it would damage her soul. Gabriel calmly reassured her that the body before them was only a projection, rather than her real body. She explained that, at worst, she would remain bedridden for a few days, but would survive. Ignoring Freya's worried calls, Gabriel advanced toward the Dark Canopy as divine energy began gathering around her. She unleashed a brilliant wave of holy power and charged straight into the Dark Canopy. As her radiant aura collided with the massive cloud of undead energy, the darkness trembled under the impact. Suddenly, Gabriel sensed a powerful presence hidden within the Legion. A gigantic undead dragon emerged from the Dark Canopy, its body overflowing with sinister purple energy. Gabriel stared directly at the undead dragon and mockingly remarked that she had finally seen its true form. The undead dragon immediately launched a fierce attack, and countless undead surged forward alongside it. Their clash shook the sky as explosions and waves of magical energy spread across the battlefield. Watching the battle from afar, Freya realized that this was the terrifying strength of a true fourth-tier Grand Magus. Arian admitted that such overwhelming power was still far beyond his current reach. Knowing Gabriele had risked everything to buy them time, Arian urged Freya not to waste her sacrifice. The carriage raced away from the battlefield at full speed, while Gabriele continued fighting alone, holding back the endless undead army with her radiant holy power. Seeing the devastating assault, the hooded Necromancer who was controlling the undeads immediately ordered everyone to defend and raise their shields. The undead army responded at once, forming massive layers of magical barriers to block the incoming holy attacks. Gabrielle noticed the defensive formation, but remained calm. She silently hoped that her lady had already escaped to safety before gathering even more holy power. With a brilliant burst of light, Gabrielle unleashed another overwhelming attack that pierced through the barriers and detonated across the battlefield. The explosion tore apart large sections of the Dark Canopy, scattering countless undead and ripping a massive hole through the Dark Legion. As the battlefield fell silent for a brief moment, the hooded Necromancer looked at Gabrielle with curiosity and recognized her as an angel from the Divine Kingdom. The hooded Necromancer asked Gabrielle what relationship she had with the Crown Princess. Instead of answering, Gabrielle mocked him, declared that it was none of his business, and warned that next time she would personally cut off his head with her axe. The Necromancer burst into laughter as Gabrielle flew away. Watching her leave, he wondered how many hidden trump cards the Crown Princess still had on her side, before admitting that the situation was becoming more troublesome. He then ordered his forces to fall back and retreat. Meanwhile, Arian stopped the carriage after realizing they had run out of fuel and water and needed to restock. As they prepared to continue their journey, Freya heard someone crying in the distance and asked Arian if he had heard it as well. Arian immediately turned toward the sound, noticing something moving far across the open field. Arian and Freya followed the cries and found several villagers mourning beside the bloodied body of a dead plow ox. One grieving boy clung to the animal while sobbing, and a nearby villager assumed they had only heard the cries of a farmer who had lost his ox. Freya realized that the sound had come from a person, not an animal. Elsewhere, outside the laboratory, Kayan struggled to his feet while cursing the barbarian who had defeated him. At that moment, a man named as Kali Wedges arrived, surrounded by a green aura, and informed Kayan that he had come to take over his assignment. Shocked, Kayan wondered if his master was abandoning him. Kali Wedges denied it, and explained that because of everything Kayan had endured during the mission, their master was actually planning to promote him to the 3rd tier. Kayan gratefully accepted the news of his promotion, and thanked his master through Kali Wedges. Kali Wedges warned him not to celebrate yet, explaining that their master was still furious, and would have gladly flayed him alive if not for the recommendation of a 4th tier Grand Magus. Confused, Kayan asked why he was being told all this. Kali Wedges explained that if Kayan shared information about their targets and helped complete the mission, he might receive a small share of the credit, allowing him to make up for his mistakes. Kayan agreed to provide the information, but only in exchange for an additional reward. Meanwhile in the village, Arian spent time with the local children, handing out candy and chatting with them. A villager approached to thank him for helping bury her husband, and for providing so many supplies. Arian politely refused the gratitude, saying she had already thanked him enough by telling him where to find water. Arian told Freya that Auntie had informed him about a well in a nearby village. He explained that once they refilled the Magitech carriage, they could continue their journey. Feeling helpless, Freya wondered if she was completely useless, lamenting that the people of Elond were suffering while she, the crown princess, could do nothing to help. Arian reassured her that staying alive was the most important thing for now. As they departed, he reminded her that as long as they lived, there was still hope. Encouraged by his words, Freya smiled as their carriage headed toward the nearest inn before nightfall. That evening they arrived at an inn and were served a warm meal. They changed their getup so no one can recognize them. During dinner, Freya questioned why Arian had insisted on booking 2 rooms. Arian explained that although they had reserved 2 rooms, they would sleep in only one. If enemies came looking for them during the night, the extra room might confuse them and keep them from finding the correct one. Freya realized Arian's plan and jokingly asked if he had intended to share a room with her from the very beginning. Embarrassed by her own words, she quickly told him not to say such strange things. Before their conversation could continue, a loud crash echoed through the inn, followed by terrified screams. The innkeeper shouted for everyone to block the windows as a monstrous creature smashed through the building and let out a deafening roar. A thick wooden spear shot across the room and struck the monster with tremendous force, driving it backward. The people inside stared in shock before turning toward Arian. He simply let out a quiet scoff, ready to deal with the sudden threat. The people inside the inn immediately praised Arian for saving them, calling him a hero and praying for Odin's blessings upon him. Embarrassed by the sudden attention, Arian realized he had acted too quickly and covered his face in regret. Some time ago, Kali Wedges held a glowing skull and praised his lord, declaring that he would spread his lord's grace to many more. Using the skull's power, he searched for a target and sensed a powerful aura about 1,200 meters to the southeast. Surprised that it appeared so quickly, he realized the method he had been told about had worked. He used the aura to guide his search and ordered the surrounding monsters to find that exalted highness. Back at the inn and present, Arian sensed the approaching danger and warned everyone to prepare for a fight. Arian quickly organized everyone inside the inn. He ordered them to pile tables and chairs against the door, told the men on the first floor to gather their weapons, sent the women and children upstairs, and instructed everyone with a weapon to stand at the front. As the barricade was secured, Arian suddenly raised a finger to his lips and signaled everyone to stay silent. He walked to the entrance and listened carefully. A woman cried from outside, begging for someone to help. She pleaded to be let in, claiming monsters were everywhere and begging for mercy. Some of the people inside urged Arian to open the door, insisting they could not leave her outside to die. Arian stopped them and calmly asked whether there were really monsters outside. The woman answered that there were far too many to count, and desperately begged for the door to be opened. Even as the others insisted they should let her in before it was too late, Arian questioned how many people were outside with her. The woman claimed she was alone, and accused them of being willing to watch a young, beautiful, nasty girl get torn apart by monsters. Keeping his composure, Arian pointed out the flaw in her story. If she was truly alone, he questioned how she had managed to make it through a countless horde of monsters and reach the inn by herself. The survivors began to realize Arian was right. They questioned how this nasty girl could have reached the inn alive, and one of them hesitantly wondered if she was not actually human. Before anyone could react further, violent pounding shook the barricaded door. When someone asked what they should do next, Arian calmly requested a weapon. As soon as a sword was handed to him, he gripped it firmly and rushed toward the entrance. Without hesitation, Arian drove the blade through the wooden door. From the other side, long ghoul bone claws suddenly burst through the cracked wood, confirming that a monster had been waiting outside all along. Arian pointed out that the creatures had already started clawing at the door. The barricade exploded apart as a hulking ghoul smashed through the entrance, scattering broken furniture and debris across the room. Seeing the monster, Arian immediately concluded that there was definitely a necromancer controlling the undead from somewhere behind the horde. Arian's attacked downward with his sword in a single clean strike, cutting through the charging ghoul with ease. Looking completely unfazed, he remarked that the monster was making far too much noise before casually assuring everyone to relax because he was there. He then glanced through the shattered entrance and immediately fell silent. Outside, an enormous horde of ghouls stretched across the streets, leaving even Arian briefly speechless. The others stared in horror as the monsters closed in. One of them asked what those creatures were, while another cursed the overwhelming numbers. Arian warned everyone that no matter what happened, they must not get bitten because every single ghoul was poisonous. Without wasting another second, Arian ordered everyone to prepare for battle. The survivors raised their weapons and charged together, shouting for everyone to kill the monsters and protect their families. They fought desperately while trying to keep the horde from reaching the second floor. Freya encouraged everyone not to be afraid, stay together, and keep the children protected in the center. The frightened women and children huddled together as another ghoul suddenly leaped toward them. Before it could attack, it was knocked away and crashed across the floor. While this was done by Freya, she quickly told everyone not to panic, but another ghoul lunged straight at them. Some women started throwing things such as bottle, can, knife, utensils, and many more toward the ghouls. Freya calmly remarked that, just as expected from Elon's women, there was nothing to worry about. Blue magic gathered between her hands before countless icy shards formed around her. With a swift motion, she unleashed the spell, sending the crystal blades flying into the charging ghoul. As the magic struck its target, Freya revealed the spell as Wind Step Butt Slam and remarked that it was a nasty technique. Inwardly, she told Arian not to get worried about second floor, as she can protect these people with the help of the shield. Nearby, Arian explained that they could not stay there waiting to die, and that he was going outside to find the Necromancer. One person reluctantly agreed. Arian immediately charged through the ghouls, ordering them to get out of his way as he cut through them and burst outside. After several strikes, his sword cracked apart. Seeing the broken blade, he realized the situation was bad, but noted that ordinary iron had already lasted surprisingly long. Looking at the damaged weapon, he concluded that there was only one thing left to do. Jirein activated Core, World Forge. Golden energy covered his body as armor and twin blades formed around him. Now fully equipped, Arian admitted he had never played this class before, but even he knew a barbarian was not complete without twin blades and rage. Wearing the newly forged armor, he charged straight into the horde and cut through the ghouls. Watching from a distance, Kali Wedges was stunned and wondered what he was seeing. He recalled being told that the crown princess had only one temporary barbarian with her. Still staring at Arian, he realized Kachan had tricked him again. After noticing the glowing firefly tail light, Arian recognized it as Two-Faced Kachan's spell. He tightened his grip on his weapon after realizing that only teammates could see the green glow, while the person marked by it remained completely unaware. He wondered if Kayan was planning to switch sides once again. Without hesitation, he hurled his spear straight ahead. Arian realized that the person marked farther ahead had to be the Necromancer. The weapon pierced through Kali Wedges. Before Kali Wedges could react any further, Kayan suddenly appeared beside him. He reminded Kali Wedges that his mentor should have taught him there was no such thing as impossible. Shocked, Kali Wedges could only wonder why Kayan had intervened. Kayan answered that there was no special reason and that their interests simply happened to align. At that moment, Arian arrived, surrounded by golden light, and faced Kayan, calling him Kayan Palace and remarking that they had met again. Kayan asked Arian whether he wanted to work together. Arian asked how that cooperation would work. Kayan explained that his terms were simple. Once Arian returned to the capital, he wanted him to rally the reformists and stir up trouble for Kayan's master, Lucius Silla Fen Lodage. In the best-case scenario, Lucius would be exiled to some distant land. Arian asked why he wanted that. Kayan explained that once Lucius was exiled, he will surely try to get his position again. Therefore, Lucius would certainly groom a powerful right-hand man to clear the way. Kayan intended to become that path-clearing man and use that opportunity to advance to the 4th tier. Arian then asked what Kayan would offer in return. Kayan explained that he would remain the reformist's mole on the inside. Even if the crown princess was exposed and sent a distress signal, the message would reach Lucius several days late. If the royal family sent a strong enough escort, Arian's group should be able to return to Avonmore safely. Satisfied with the proposal, Arian accepted the deal and began to guarantee, before his words were cut off. After making the agreement, Kachan walked away, warning that Lucius would not have a happy ending. Watching him leave, Arian hoped Kayan would keep his word. He realized that if Freya had sent a distress signal, there was only one possibility. It meant the civilians were in danger, not her. That also told him Kayan understood her extremely well. Later, the townspeople celebrated their victory with cheers and music, but Arian remained focused. He insisted that they needed to return to Avonmore as soon as possible, because more innocent people would die if they delayed. Freya immediately began writing a letter to the nearest temple, explaining that the royal family could be notified through their special communication channels, allowing them to find a way to contact her. A glowing portal opened, and the dog rushed out happily. Freya fastened the letter to Sox's collar and instructed him to deliver it to the nearest temple. Freya reminded Sox not to reveal Arian's location to anyone except Otto. After gently patting the loyal dog, she sent him on his mission. The next morning, Arian was resting inside the house when he suddenly sensed someone outside. As he opened the door, he came face to face with a pink-haired young man named Otto. Otto immediately demanded to know what kind of relationship Arian had with his sister. Before Arian could explain, 2 armored knights stepped in, and Otto questioned him about where his sister was. Freya quickly interrupted them, calling out to her little brother, Otto. She then introduced Arian to him. After giving Arian a brief look, Otto coldly ordered everyone to pack up because they were leaving in the carriage immediately. Arian, Freya, Otto, and the knights boarded a carriage and set off for Avonmore. As they departed, one of the knights gave the order to move, and the horses pulled the carriage toward the city. When they arrived in Avonmore, the citizens immediately recognized that Princess Freya had returned. They excitedly welcomed her back as news of her arrival spread through the streets. Later, Freya hurried into the castle and rushed to her father's bedside. The king was overjoyed to see her safe and welcomed her back. Without wasting any time, Freya tearfully informed her father that the Necromancer faction had betrayed them. The king questioned whether the Necromancer faction had truly betrayed only their kingdom, or whether they had betrayed the entire continent of Eland. Freya explained that their betrayal extended far beyond them, revealing that the Deathless Salvation sect, a group of eldritch god worshippers, had betrayed the entire mortal realm. After hearing her explanation, the king understood the gravity of the situation. He then asked Freya about a young man named Arian, having heard that she had formed an alliance with him, and wanted to know what kind of person he was. Freya thought for a moment before describing Arian as a strange but remarkable person. The king smiled and instructed her to invite Arian to dine with them because he wanted to meet the young man himself. Freya happily agreed and left the room. After she departed, the king asked Ashuram if he had come to see him, admitting that he refused to believe the old man had been unable to detect the existence of the cultists. The king then says that while they were eating, Ashuram should carefully observe the young man. The king declared that he wanted to know everything there was to know about Arian. A short while later, Arian was resting in his room when someone knocked on the door. Still lying on the bed, he lazily told the visitor to come in. The visitor introduced herself as Maria, the head handmaiden of Mihwang Palace, and respectfully informed Arian that, by the order of His Majesty Gusmith, he had been invited to dine with the king that evening. She added that his journey must have been tiring, and suggested that he spend the afternoon bathing and resting before dinner. Arian accepted the invitation, agreeing that it was proper etiquette. Maria then escorted him to the royal bathhouse. After arriving, she politely informed him that they had reached the bathing area and offered to help him undress and prepare for his bath. Arian gently stopped Maria and told her that helping him undress would not be necessary. When he asked whether this was part of the kingdom's standard reception, Maria respectfully explained that assisting honored guests was simply a handmaiden's duty. Well, that's some of the nasty duties that even Arian has heard of. Arian calmly accepted her answer before revealing that he had not expected the Gusmith family to be powerful enough to have a third-tier class holder serving as a handmaiden. Realizing that her true strength had been discovered, Maria admitted to herself that he had seen through her disguise. She politely excused herself, saying she would no longer disturb his rest, and left the bathhouse. After leaving, Maria met Ashuram outside. He teasingly asked what kind of man the young man is who had caught Freya's interest. Maria described Arian as an awkward yet sharp-eyed young man who was definitely not someone to underestimate. Ashuram remarked that he had not asked her to evaluate Arian so thoroughly, making it clear that he only wanted a simple report on the young man. Maria teased Ashuram, saying she had only been lending a hand, and asked if the captain was feeling jealous. Ashuram told her not to overthink it because her job was finished and he would handle the rest himself. When Maria asked if he was personally stepping in, Ashuram replied that a little mischief from his subordinates would accomplish nothing, and decided to take action on his own. Meanwhile, Arian changed into the formal clothes prepared for the evening, while also removing his disguised features such as his hair color. As he finished getting dressed, he suddenly noticed an enormous white wolf standing inside his room. Surprised, he wondered where this dog had come from before correcting himself, realizing it was not a dog, but a wolf. Watching from a distance, Ashuram ordered the wolf Yahello to go and greet its new boss and have a little fun with him. Yahello immediately leaped toward Arian with its jaws wide open, as if it were about to attack. However, the moment it got close, it suddenly froze in surprise. Instead of becoming frightened, Arian calmly reached out and began rubbing the giant wolf's belly. Yahello instantly rolled onto its back, wagging happily and enjoying the attention. Watching the scene, Maria laughed and admitted that their plan had completely failed. Ashuram clicked his tongue, calling it a miscalculation. He decided to judge Arian himself. As Arian continued petting the wolf, he guessed that its name must be Sheila if his memories are correct. He then looked toward the approaching Ashuram, and Ashuram asked if he was Arian alien. He stepped forward with Sheila beside him. Arian immediately recognized him as Ashuram, one of the 4th-tier elite bosses. Ashuram invited Arian to a sparring match, explaining that he wanted to see what kind of man Freya had taken an interest in. Arian politely accepted, saying it would be an honor. They headed to the training grounds outside Belfont Palace. As they arrived, the guards greeted Ashuram as their mentor. He ordered everyone to clear the area because he was about to spar with the young man from the north. The announcement immediately caught everyone's attention. The trainees were shocked that their mentor was fighting someone, while others became excited, remembering that the last person who challenged him had ended up in the healing ward. Standing across the arena, Ashuram asked if Arian was ready. After Arian calmly confirmed that he was, Ashuram warned him not to die. Arian confidently replied that he was not so easy to kill. Ashuram charged forward with tremendous force. Before his attack could reach Arian, suddenly Arian uses World Reshape skill and shapes a sword. The sword Cummings helped Arian to block the attack with a rock shield. Flames erupted from Arian's blade as he stood firmly inside the shattered earth, completely unharmed. Ashuram asked whether the flames covering Arian's sword were his class skill. Arian smiled and casually replied that it was something like that. Without giving him any time to rest, Ashuram rushed forward again, and Arian told Ashuram not to stop. Both immediately exchanged a rapid series of strikes. Their wooden swords collided repeatedly until Arian's blade shattered into pieces. Ashuram praised Arian, saying he had already seen enough, and suggested ending the spar there. Arian calmly refused, saying it was not necessarily over yet. The flames around Arian's sword suddenly surged outward. Realizing the attack was far more dangerous than expected, Ashuram immediately shouted for everyone to clear the area. A massive fiery slash tore across the training ground, erupting into a violent explosion that filled the arena with smoke and dust. After the blast settled, Ashuram admitted that this was what exceptional talent looked like, remarking that the younger generation was truly extraordinary. Ashuram praised Arian, saying he had closed the gap between them far more than expected. Even so, he reminded Arian that he was still far from matching a 4th-tier mentor. He then told Arian to change into something new, because dealing with King Gustava would be much tougher. After changing clothes, Arian spotted Freya in the palace hallway and called out to her. Freya turned around in surprise. Arian laughed and asked if Freya did not recognize him. Freya admitted that Arian's appearance had changed so much that she almost failed to recognize him. Suddenly Otto came and even joked that he never expected a barbarian to look so proper in noble clothing. Confused, Arian asked why Otto was dressed like that, like a woman, even asked if Otto's favorite color is rainbow. Otto immediately argued that no one had decided men could not wear women's wear. Well, fair deal. Freya reminded Arian that it was his turn to go inside. Arian entered the hall, respectfully greeted the people present, and introduced himself as Arian Alien. He respectfully greeted the king, saying it was an honor to stand before his majesty. The king says that he had already heard about him from Freya, then asked what Arian thought about the current state of Eland, and encouraged him to speak freely about what he wanted to do. After a brief pause, Arian answered with a single direct proposal. He wanted to reform Eland. Later that night, Kyan reported that to his mentor, the Crown Princess, and the Barbarian had already arrived in Avonmore. The old man, now revealed as Lucius, calmly drank the strange potion before saying that the Revelation-grade Wraith Colossus, the Refuser of Death, was progressing smoothly. He added that he would continue fueling the conflict between the Conservatives and the Reformists to buy them more time, then declared that once the Refuser of Death was complete, even King's family would have no choice but to compromise. His disciple, Kayan, acknowledged the order, saying he understood what needed to be done. Lucius dismissed him, and Kayan bowed respectfully before leaving. Afterward, Lucius spoke to a strange sentient plant, which questioned whether the young ritualist was truly the disciple he had chosen, remarking that he did not seem very impressive. Lucius replied that Kachan was not his heir, and that even if he needed one, he would never choose someone so mediocre. Lucius then summoned a glowing blue magical map and revealed that it showed the city's underground waterways. He instructed the plant to enter the city sewers and place technical sigils at the marked locations. The plant chuckled, commenting that he was going all out, and accepted the task. The sentient plant remarked that Lucius was prepared to make an enemy of the entire civilized world. At the same time, in the royal audience hall, Arian continued that future awakened extraordinaries were the ones most likely to discover new paths and create new solutions. He believed they would lead Eland into a brand new age. Looking at the kneeling Arian, the king suggested that he might be one of those people. He explained that despite being only at the 1st tier, Arian's cultivation had already surpassed the 2nd tier because of his top-grade refined mana reserves. He added that Arian's physique was already showing signs of breaking free from material limitations. The king then asked what someone like Arian would have been called 1,000 years ago, before answering his own question. He declared that Arian was a complete seed. Arian repeated the king's words in surprise, wondering what a complete seed meant. King Jistin explained the path of cultivation. The 1st tier surpassed instinct, the 2nd tier surpassed the flesh, the 3rd tier surpassed the soul, the 4th tier surpassed the mundane by forging the core, and the 5th tier completed the union of body and spirit, achieving true completion. As Arian listened, he recalled that he had already reached the 5th tier in the game before, but he realized that it seemed different from the cultivation system the king was describing. King Jistin remarked that the world now truly belonged to Arian's generation. He then called out to Afridia, or say Freya, and said he was counting on her. Finally, he instructed her to stay close to Arian and spend more time with him. In the end, Bro got approval from her dad. What else does he even want now? Now's the best time to seal the deal before someone else breaks her seal. And with this, we've come to the end of today's episode. If you stayed till the last second, drop your thoughts about this story, and in the comments, guess what our MC will do next. A quick like helps more than you think, and subscribing makes sure you never miss what comes next. Thank you for watching, and check out this video right here.